Okay.
All right, great. All right, so my name is Abi Wakana from IT News Africa. And today we're going to have a great webinar put together by IT News Africa and ATS Network Management. And it's titled Observability, is it monitoring on steroids or a new frontier? So I'm going to stop sharing that now so you can see my face quite clearly. Okay. All right. And to get started, we have a presentation by Glenn Lazarus. Glenn is the CEO of ATS Network Management, and they've partnered with us on this. And I welcome all our friends from West Africa. And today you will learn about the evolution of cloud computing and the need for hybrid cloud observability, a solution that provides visibility, intelligence, and automation across different platforms and environments. You'll also discover how to leverage AI-powered analytics and automation to proactively detect and resolve issues in hybrid IT environments, as well as how to benefit from flexible deployment and licensing options for hybrid cloud observability. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first presenter for today, Mr. Glenn Lazarus from ATS Network Management. Thank you, and I'll see you later. Over to you, Glenn.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to our team, Pranil and Gulam from SolarWinds, who joined us for the session today. We look forward to an interesting discussion. And just a little bit of background on myself, been in the network performance monitoring industry for almost just over 20 years now. Started out when things were fairly simple and easy to manage and make sure that networks ran efficiently. And we basically traversed this interesting environment, moving into network management, application performance management, database performance management, and service desk management, alongside that monitoring security over the years and as we've evolved. Our solutions are fast becoming have become leading edge solutions. And I think today we're going to discuss some of those solutions and also discuss some of the strategies that organizations are taking today in order to deal with some of the big issues facing enterprise networks. So for me, I think the key is observability. You know, it's a big word. It's a word that is flashing around the internet. Everybody's talking about, observability. What is it really about? And why has it become so important for us today to make sure that we're monitoring and managing our enterprises efficiently? So just to take a little bit of a short route through and discuss what is the difference between monitoring versus observability. What comes to me front of mind is monitoring. To me is almost like looking at your watch. You know, when you're waiting for the time and you say, well, you know, how close are we? Is it kickoff time? You're watching, and eventually, you know, at 12 o'clock and you kick off. But ultimately, it's not enough. It's just making sure that you're keeping an eye on things and doesn't go very complex and into much more detail. On the other hand, observability is like looking at the stars through a telescope. It gives you the entire vision, entire visibility of what you can see in terms of the patterns and the anomalies, and looking at everything from the enterprise. But a key component to both monitoring and observability is visibility, because if you don't have visibility of the enterprise, well, you know, you don't have much clarity. And visibility is like looking through the magnifying glass, being able to see into everything that's happening inside the network and inside the enterprise. It's making sure that everything is visible in your environment. So what are the limitations that monitoring has and that observability brings to the party? I think a key function is network monitoring offers limited contextual information that makes it difficult to make informed decisions. it also has things like it provides inadequate alerts, or sometimes maybe too many alerts. And we'll touch on things like alert fatigue and so many false positives and so many false negatives as we go through. And we'll talk about that during the presentation today. But another important thing about network monitoring and its limitations is there are so many blind spots, because we can only see what we know about. And if we don't know about it, then we're completely blind to what's going on in front of us. What we do know is that the IT landscape has transformed dramatically over the last 2 years specifically, and prior to that was evolving constantly. And how's this transformation affecting every single one of us every single day? I think a key aspect of how transformation is taking place is the fact that we've moved from being purely an on-premise environment to being hybrid cloud, to being environments where we have distributed data centers. We have environments where we have branch offices that we connect. We also have pure cloud, we have hybrid cloud, we have software as a service. Plus we have all our end users coming in remotely, coming in from home, and the whole work from home environment. So what we find is that there are many different silos and lots of tool sprawls. Many organizations have many different flavors of equipment and using different tools to manage those environments. We have poor service delivery issues. We have manual root cause analysis, and we have high risk and low productivity. And alongside all of this is the fact that we look at infrastructure. The infrastructure side of things has grown dramatically. The applications have grown in their thousands, and databases have become huge. And overall, there needs to be management of the performance of these databases. So we're competing in an environment where there's multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. We need to be able to cater for the infrastructure, SD-WAN. We have modern dashboards and modern ways of dealing with situations. And then we have the whole development environment. And all of these components are part of that transformation strategy and environment that we're growing and expanding all the time. So if we look at some of these aspects, some of the key challenges that our customers are facing, first of all, things like tool sprawl. Staff have to be able to manage many different types of solutions and have knowledge and skill in different types of solutions in order to manage this environment where there's so many different solutions to provide a good interface and a good monitoring solution to manage the environment. We have multiple information sources bringing so much data together, and this leads to lots of inefficiencies. Business services are distributed across the hybrid cloud environment, presenting unique challenges and making troubleshooting and optimization difficult. We're receiving too many alerts, causing alert fatigue and putting customers and end user experience at risk. And finally, we're not achieving our SLAs because we're not able to manage this environment and make sure that we have clear visibility on what's going on. Monitoring effectively is the foundation of observability. It's reactive. It conveys what's happening. Is my system actually working, and is designed around collecting of metrics and logs to detect known problems and previously identified patterns. It's almost like, an accounting system. An accounting system doesn't predict what we're going to do or what we're going to sell or what we're going to invoice in the future. What an accounting system does is it says, what did we do yesterday? How much did we invoice? And that's kind of like what monitoring is all about. Observability, on the other hand, is the proactive. It's reaching out. It's looking at what we have today, and it's predicting through knowing what we have, through the insights and through the artificial intelligence, to make sure that we have proactive capabilities of what is my system doing now, what is it going to be doing to manage the growth of the data, and how we're collecting all this information to make sure that everything we do is monitored and provided effectively and efficiently to solve complex business solutions. Multi-licensed, making sure that you have a single environment that is complete for everyone to utilize. It doesn't matter in terms of who you are in the environment and what your requirement is. You should be able to see what your needs are. If you're an IT pro, you should be able to see what's going on. So what are the key components of observability? Number one, the logs. These provide records of the system, the events that can be used to detect these patterns and anomalies and are essential for troubleshooting. We have all the metrics that provide the way to track the performance of the systems over time. They can be used to forecast trends and identify issues before they become critical. And the traces provide a detailed record of how flow of requests, of the flow of requests through a system that can be utilized to pinpoint issues in a complex distributed environment. Alerts are notifications that trigger when certain conditions are met. They can be used to notify teams of critical issues that require immediate attention. But it's not limited to things like an email. It could be a trigger. It could be an activity that automatically does some remediation in the background, not requiring human intervention. And that's an important function of what observability provides. It requires less human intervention because there is all the machine learning, artificial intelligence, and all the information being stored to make decisions prior to that alerting capabilities. So what is the key difference? Observability provides a much more dynamic approach. It is more inclusive approach, facilitating dynamic monitoring and helping network managers and executives at senior levels to formulate effective responses to changing scenarios. Observability collects data, detailed data and granular data with rich context, while network monitoring focuses on simple view of the network. Observability also emphasizes communication between teams, while network monitoring may be very siloed, limiting communication and insight. And so we are able to manage our environments much more effectively. The benefits of observability: clearly, with root cause analysis, making it much faster and easier to result in reduced mean time to repair and fewer network errors. That is a fundamental part, mean time to solving problems and making sure that those problems can be remediated without human intervention, and only alerting and making sure that triggers are in place to resolve those problems that are sticky and that we cannot resolve. Improved collaboration between the teams, resulting in much more efficient decision making and better outcomes. A much better customer experience. Let's face it, at the end of the day, our IT professionals are out there to make sure that our end users have a much better customer experience and satisfaction rating, making sure that systems are available all the time. Systems need to make sure that they are much more resilient, providing and enable teams to identify and resolve these issues quickly and efficiently, reducing downtime and increasing service uptime using actionable insights, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. And alongside all of this is obviously security, because we need to know exactly what's going on. Are there potential threats? What's happening? Make sure that our systems are always up to date. But another important aspect of this is not only the security component, but also the service desk integration, making sure that we have complete service desk integration with our complete observability solution that provides this information to us in a clear, visible environment. So why is observability so essential for enterprise management? I think key to this is our modern enterprises are increasingly complex, as I've shown in some of the slides. They involve many different layers and components, often spread across multiple data centers, clouds, on-prem, and so on. And we're so much more reliant on the speed. These systems need to be efficient. We've recently had a couple of cable issues across the Atlantic over the last couple of weeks, affecting performance. And this then creates many problems for our user experience because response times are degraded. We also need to make sure that these systems are more reliant than ever before, because today it's vital that our systems are always available and that we are making sure that our modern systems do not go down. We need to make sure that we never ever have downtime. Any downtime leads to lost revenue and decreased customer satisfaction. It can also lead to things like even legal challenges if we have systems that are down. So what is it that the SolarWinds platform brings to this observability capability? As one of the leaders in the industry providing unified monitoring, observability, and service management platforms, SolarWinds caters for this entire platform. An important part of it is obviously accelerated transformation, moving from being purely on-prem to hybrid cloud environment to pure cloud. All these environments are available together. We can mix and match and make sure that we're giving visibility across these complex environments. It also fuels innovation and delivery, making sure that there's superior digital experience. We maximize agility and making sure that operational efficiencies is superb. Also making sure that we minimize the cost and the risk. But what is important to all of this is provided through what we call a single pane of glass. And what do we mean when we talk about a single pane of glass? Many of you out there today have many different flavors of hardware and different platforms. But what is important is an environment where you have different types of servers and different types of routers. Those vendors have vendor-specific management solutions. Our management solutions are completely agnostic. It makes no difference to us what brands you're running. We will bring in all the information, all the logs, all the traces, all the matrices from any of these vendors and bring it all together in one central platform. So we give a user experience that is fantastic. We monitor the network and the infrastructure, the application performance. We monitor security and compliance. We monitor the database performance and obviously the cloud services as well. But this is not only aimed at specific types of people and personas. The key here is it's for a IT pro, whether that person is managing a single part of the environment or the executive at senior level. We're able to create views and capabilities that make sure that the information you see is real, live, and able to make real business decisions that are meaningful instantly all the time. Making sure that the applications, where they're running in the cloud, and the services that are running, and whether it be private cloud or multi-cloud or databases, are running effectively and efficiently all the time. An interesting note that I picked up while I was doing some reading on the internet recently. According to Forbes, 1/3 of cloud migrations fail outright. That's a startling figure if you think that an enterprise moves into the cloud and that migration fails. 25% of organizations meet their migration deadlines. 25%, guys. That's just a crazy number. It means that the goalposts are constantly shifting and we're not able to meet those requirements. And we need to have the tools and the management to give us that visibility in order to achieve those goals. 90% of CIOs have experienced failed or disrupted cloud-based data migration projects. So what we're saying here is it's essential to have the right tools to make sure that these data migrations and that these transformation strategies are all working effectively and efficiently. How does SolarWinds make sure that we bridge this gap? Well, fundamentally, if we look at the components here, we provide a full stack journey of observability. It includes network infrastructure products, security and compliance, the application side, the database performance, and this is in hybrid cloud environment, but also as we move into pure observability, where we're monitoring pure cloud environment, we cater for all these environments as the organization grows from being purely on-prem to hybrid cloud to full cloud or to private cloud, and making sure that we cater for these environments effectively and efficiently all the time. So the power of observability is to configure, observe, analyze, predict, act, and remediate. And these are the essential tools that are required to make sure that IT pros run an efficient and very complex environment, but make sure that they have 24/7 availability all the time. So this is that seamless approach to migration and simplifying the hybrid cloud experience for all our users out there. What's unique about how SolarWinds delivers this is the fact that we really break our hybrid cloud products down into two different licensing models, making sure that even the smallest organization has all the power tools in our observability suite to make sure that you can deliver the best possible solution and the best possible user experience all the time to your customers. So whether you are starting off with the entry-level package, which is licensing per node and giving your team the essential tools, or you are a larger corporate who needs much bigger observability capabilities, introducing all the additional components, including things like virtualization manager, network configuration manager, and server configuration monitoring, and all the AI ops components. And then finally, when you're in that environment where you need failover capabilities, we have all the ability to include all of this for failover. But what goes one step further with our solution is that the licensing model makes it easier and less expensive to minimize costs. It doesn't matter to you whether you are running an environment where you need many different monitoring engines and bring them all into one enterprise operational console. You don't get penalized through cost. And we also have a sandbox capability. So if there's testing requirement, there's no cost to building your test environment and making sure that all your systems are running efficiently. So today, SolarWinds is the leader in observability, making sure that you have the right tools to give your enterprise complete visibility. I also was reading an article a couple of weeks ago, which made quite a lot of sense to me. It was about a young kid who was lived in a rural area, and there was a king who lived in a palace a few places a kilometer away, and he was watching this palace for years, and eventually plucked up the courage one day to walk into the palace and to go up to the king and say to the king, "How were you able to build this huge palace with all its glory and all the gold and all the people who look up to you?" And the king turned around to this youngster and said, "I haven't got the time to tell you this. It's such a long story. It'll take too long. I don't have time to tell you, but would you like a cup of tea?" And the youngster says, "Yes, I'd love a cup of tea." And king snaps his finger and a cup of tea arrives and puts in front of the youngster. And the youngster's about to take a sip of the cup of tea. And the king says, "No, don't drink that yet." He says, "What I'd like you to do is to walk through the 3 kilometers of my palace with this cup of tea. But one thing that's most important is you're not to spill or drip or taste any of the tea until you come back to me." And the youngster rushes off with his cup of tea and goes through the palace. And 3 hours later, he comes back to the king and he looks at the king, and the king says, "So, let me see the cup." And he has a look at the cup, and the cup is still full to the brim, and the youngster is beaming. And the king says, "Wow, that's fantastic. Did you happen to notice the gold ceilings as you walked through my 3 kilometers of palace? And when you walked through, did you manage to see all the beautiful princesses? And did you see all the artwork? And did you see all our Manchester United, all our football players that are, all the top football players, are pictures of all of them as we go through the palace?" And the youngster says, "No, I didn't see any of that." He said, "Okay, what I want you to do now is I want you to walk through the palace once again. But this time, make sure that you see everything as you walk through. Take notes. Make sure you see all the gold and the silver and all the princesses and all the football players and all the artwork." And 3 hours later, the youngster's taken his turn, comes back to the king, and he's beaming, and he said, "Wow, king, I saw absolutely everything. I saw the artwork, I saw the princesses, and I saw the ceilings that were, all the effort that's gone into these ceilings and everything, and the gardens, they look so beautiful." And the king looks down at the teacup and he sees that there's nothing left in the teacup. And he says, "What happened to the tea?" And the youngster says, well, it spilt along the way. I was too busy looking at everything else. And I think this is part of what observability is all about. Not only observability, it's also a life lesson for all of us. What we see here is that we're too focused on certain components. And then when we're looking at those things, we forget what's going on around us. So the important aspect is observability gives us that big picture. We're able to see granular detail while we're concentrating on the key business practice that we need to do every day. As I said, it's not only a lesson in observability and in network performance, it's also a life lesson for us to make sure that as we're going through life, that we focus on the big picture and we navigate this chart to make sure that for our everyday users, for our business users, for every aspect of what we're providing to people, we're looking after them and giving them the best possible solution for their enterprise. So I hope I've given you a little bit of insight into what observability is all about and a touch on some of the power. And I want to introduce our next speaker. And before I introduce him, just touch on one or two key things that are very important for me. When I talk about SolarWinds, I think about how efficient organizations can be today because of the power and the tools that we give them. But we give them some fantastic facilities. We give them tools like NetPath and AppStack and many of the AI ops and capabilities that are not available in other solutions. And these are standard features that empower us and empower IT pros to make sure that you have the right tools and can see exactly how your enterprises are running all the time. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Gulam, who is a senior support engineer at SolarWinds, who's going to take us through some of the key features of the SolarWinds solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn, for your presentation. So as you were saying, I will share my screen now and I will show you our platform so that you can get an idea of how it looks in practice, observability. So as we can see, as Glenn was saying earlier, we have a platform approach, which means that all our solutions are in a single platform, a single pane of glass, which then allows us to have visibility into everything, into the full stack of our environment. So what we can see actually here is when we log into the console, so we have a summary view, and this is a condensation of all the key metrics that we have chosen to display on this page. We can, for example, have a map of a specific connection between different sites, or the error discard, for example. And again, as Les was saying, all of these pages are customizable. So if you want to actually change the widget that appear here, you can add them, remove them, make them bigger, smaller. It's all customizable. So we give you views by default, but then all of it is customizable. And then the great thing is you can create also a custom dashboard, fully custom for specific needs. So we have here an example of an executive type of dashboard where we can see that we don't go very deep into the actual issues, but more to give an overview of the health of our environment at this time. We also have historic information, more like of a KPI kind of view. But we can also do the similar dashboard with, for example, more of a security focus. So do we have some update missing on our server or endpoints? Do we have firmware vulnerability in our network device or policy violation? So we'll see this a bit more in detail when we go through each part of the tool. But yeah, this is more of a security-focused dashboard. So all of this can be created and then assigned to specific roles in the organization. Now, if we go here into my dashboard, we'll see we'll have different subviews based on the topic. So it would be network, the flow information, network configuration, logs, application, etc. And then under those topics, we'll have different kind of views. So, for example, the NPM summary will be just a view created for performance of network device specifically. We have here on the left the list, for example, of the nodes that we monitor by vendor. It can be customized. Again, you can change, you can make groups, etc. By default, it's by vendor. And then we use throughout the interface the color-coded system, green, red, yellow, to say if it's up, critical, or in warning. And we can see here that we are agnostic completely regarding vendor, because we're using standard protocols, notably for performance, we use SNMP. And then if we dig a bit deeper into one of the devices, if I take, for example, this core switch here, it's a Cisco. We'll have the detail of the node. So we'll be able to manage it also from here. So browse the MIB, which are the metric information. We can SSH directly to the device, use our perf stack tool to compare metrics. So we can plot different kinds of metrics. It can be also with between different devices. So we could add the performance of another switch on top of this one to kind of compare what's happening. And it's historical, so we can go back to, for example, the last 90 days if we wanted, and it gives us those KPIs on the right of the actual status of those metrics. And we can even browse, for example, the log files of the errors or the alerts that were triggered at those time. When it's loading, I'll just go back to this page. So this was per stack. We can access the logs. And then we can see here the detail of the node. So we see the model, the version of the iOS that is installed, the IP address, all this information. And we also get hardware detail. For example, are fans working correctly? Do we have an issue with the power supply? All of this would be listed here. The detail of the polling. So we know we get data for this every 2 minutes. And then here is the traffic information. So using the net flow capability of Cisco, we gather the traffic information, and then we're able to break down so that you don't just know how much bandwidth is consumed, but by what. So you're able to break it down by protocol to know if you have maybe some issues with some backup running when they're not supposed to, and that's using all your bandwidth. You'd be able to figure it out from there. We have the list of the interface with what is connected to the interface, the MAC address, the IP address, and the host name. And this is so the summary, but then we can have other information. If we go to vital stat, this will give us response time, package loss, CPU memory, etc. Interface will be the topology information. No, interface is the interface list, so it's the detail of each interface. Network is the topology. We have the topology information, the routing neighbor, the flapping routes. So we see we really go into a lot of details deep inside each device, but then we're able to create those overviews. So this is, for example, an automatic map. We know we are monitoring those 3 devices, so the tool automatically creates the map of the dependencies. And then you can also access from here the configuration of the device. So okay, so here we go. So these are the running and startup config of the device here, the list of what we've backed up. So we can manually download them here if we want, but we can also schedule it, obviously, so that it runs every few days, every week. As we're using SSH to access and download those files, we're able to execute scripts from there. So we can create remediation script based on some scenario, and then you can execute that directly here. You can restore also a config file. So we scan for firmware vulnerability, policy violation. So we scan the config file, and based on specific configuration that you want that you set up, tool can tell you if this configuration respects your policy. For example, it could be as the SNMP string community been changed. If not, then it will flag it here, and then you can execute a remediation script automatically to fix those config. You can compare two files, etc. So that's when we go really in depth in the device. But then all of those metrics that we pull, for example, we have created here a view that's called the top 10. So it's like a view that's very handy to see what is going on at the moment, what are the things we need to focus on right now. So, for example, top 10 interface by utilization. So it's overall in our whole environment, what are the top 10 interface that will likely cause us issue really soon, so that we need to focus. Same for problem with response time or error and discards. So very, very handy view. We also do wireless observability. So, for example, what devices are connected to our access points. We can see here the list of each clients that are connected, it's when and how much that we're using traffic. And then I want to go into NetPass. So NetPass is a troubleshooting tool that we developed, and it's basically like traceroute on steroid. So it's historical and graphical. So I'll show you an example here. If we take, for example, our Office 365, which is our cloud application, and we can see that we are actually taking this path from 4 different sources. So we'll take East and West data center, and this will give us a view of what the past looks like, so at present, but also in the past. So we can see here, actually, we were critical this morning around 6 a.m. So we know already that if a user comes and say, yeah, this morning I was unable to access Office 365, we can go to this NetPass and go back and see that, yes, actually at this time there was an issue. And if we actually zoom out and see what happened at this moment, so we see that these devices are our internal device. And then it's actually our ISP device, so our internet provider. And now it gets a bit full because we're actually going all the way to the Microsoft servers where is hosted our Office 365, and we can see where actually the path was broken. So it was here, and we can see it's on Microsoft side. So we know it's not our fault, so we can resolve the ticket. And if we want, we can also directly contact Microsoft to let them know that this node had an issue at this time, and if they can investigate or something. So really handy tool. And it integrates very well with all the rest, for example, NetSuite here. So from this office, we can see that the NetSuite application is no longer accessible. But in reality, when we look, we can see it started breaking this morning at around 8:50 a.m. And what happened at this time, actually, the tool flagged us. So that was the path at the before I go. That's the path we click now, and we can see the config change has been flagged because we are backing up the config file of this device. We also flagged there was a change in the config, and then we're able to quickly compare the two files with the baseline and see what changed in the file and why it broke. And then you're able to just go and restore the previous config to restore the access to your files. So very, very handy troubleshooting tool, NetPass.
Well, for me, Gulam, that is one of the most, when you look at products like NetPath and you see that instant visibility, we're able to see through our network, through the internet, through the ISP to a service provider like Microsoft and see exactly where the problem is and what's caused that problem without loading any software onto any agents or anything to be able to get that information is quite phenomenal. And the fact that we have that historic capability to drill down and see when that occurred and what the root cause of that problem was. And then in the example that you just showed to me, which was even more phenomenal, is because we had a number of modules working there in conjunction with each other, we had configuration manager, I was able to see that a particular problem occurred as a result of a config change that might have been updated by one of our engineers. A problem like this can take an organization days and days to pinpoint. And we were able to see that in a couple of seconds when you have that integration of our different modules within the Orion's, within the SolarWinds observability suite.
Yeah, it's a good point,
Absolutely.
Glenn.
Yeah.
Also, just to add, I mean, just looking at net paths is not just enough. I mean, we can alert on net paths going down, so engineers know exactly, when a critical cloud service is down. This can either be, emailed or, sent to your service desk, etc. So you don't have to be continuously watching these paths.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say as well. Actually, so this is just a demo site that we've spin up. So we have a few scenarios, but there's nothing actually preventing us in this situation here from actually automating all of this. So what I mean by that is, if we detect, for example, the service is no longer reachable by NetPath and the config change was also made earlier, we can automate actually to restore the config file, so that the issue is fixed itself. And then we can go back and actually look at what happened in this config change. We also have real-time change detection, which means if for some reason someone were to go into the backend of a network device and create a change in the config, the tool is able to block this change, restore the previous config, and flag that change to someone, so by email or by ticket, etc. So that you're really in control of what's going on in your environment. That's the key. The key point is to really have this observability and this control over everything that's happening. Thank you for the.
Yeah, that's really what observability is all about, isn't it? It's about that real-time machine learning and intelligence behind what's going on.
Exactly. So we've seen the network performance part. Now, if we wanted to go deeper, again, as I was saying about breaking down our traffic by protocol, this is where it goes into the net flow. So the net flow is kind of subtopic, and we can see again different views. So the summary will be global, but then we can see it break down by conversation, endpoints, or protocols. And then, so here we have all the sources that we monitor for traffic. So we have 11 sources. But the great interesting part then is to be able to filter this, because here we have everything on all of those devices, but we can then use the Flow Navigator to drill down deeper. For example, we can create a group of IP address that contains our SQL server, and if we want to just see then what happened with those servers, we can include it here, for example, and then refresh this view, and all of these will be refreshed using the filter. And then once we have a filter that's interesting, again, we have very quick access to create directly an alert from here. So once we have a filter, again, that's interesting, we can create the alert and say, okay, if this specific traffic on this specific from this specific device exceeds 10 megabits per second, I want to be alerted. So we can directly do it from there. Again, the integration between the alerting and everything. So that's the flow network configuration. So this would be the summary of what I explained regarding policy violation. So this is the overview global for everything. We can see all the nodes that we currently back up from the configuration. So this is so that's the config part. So that's more like network. Then we have our log tool. So the log tool will be able to gather logs from network device, but also from VMware event, Windows event, and also even custom folders. So we can set a custom folder in a specific server, and the tool will be able to pull the log from there. And again, so we give you an historical view of how many logs you received. But again, this is everything. So the goal here would be to filter it. So you can filter by type, by level, by IP address, etc. And also you can go back even further if you want, or you can simply do a search. And then it will refresh all this view with just the result of your search, for example. We can see how many logs we received. And then we can do intelligent tagging. So we can actually scan the log files, and if a specific condition exists, we're able to apply a tag to this file, to this log. So we can see here, for example, if I remove my search, you can see we already have a few that have been tagged, for example, authentication failure. And then these are all our logs that are concerning a failure of authentication. And with this, we can do also automation. So send an email to someone or make an action, a specific action. All of this is possible through the tool. Now we're going to go a bit more into, let's say, the system part. So the server and application monitor will allow you to have a view of the performance of application and of servers, either on-prem or in the cloud. We can see here we have created a map that's what we call a nested map. So we have different services that are represented by the logo. And for example, we have the Office 365 view. And if we click on it, actually it will redirect us to another map that we created that concerning our Office 365 environment. So we can see in this example that it's kind of an hybrid environment. We have a bit on Azure, we have a bit on prem, but for us, we're still able to display it. So we can create those connections. And we don't necessarily just give you the status of, let's say, this switch or this node, but we can go down even to the storage, to the LUN completely, and also to, for example, so here would be a web transaction that we monitor, the status of the specific Exchange mailbox metrics in Office 365. So we can really go in depth and put all the components that we want in the maps and see, okay, where actually is the issue coming from. So we can see the login is having an issue. So that might explain actually why we have the issue here. And all of this drills down again. If we take another view, so these were manual maps, but we do also do an automatic kind of view, which is called AppStack. So I'll show an example here with Exchange. So this is an Exchange server running on this VM. I mean, an Exchange application running on this server. So this is a view of the health of the application. So we can see all the metrics that we're able to pull. So for example, the size of the database of the mailbox, the space used, if it's been backed up. And here we have this environment view, where we can see actually everything that is related to Microsoft Exchange. So we can see we have multiple instances of Exchange that are running on multiple servers. All the way down again to the storage array. And we can see everything that is implied with the performance of this application. It directly filters it automatically for you. And these are all the metrics again that we pull and that we can alert on or report on or use in a map or in a custom dashboard. This is the application, but then we also have the view of the server itself. So it will be very similar to when we are looking at a network device, because we'll use, we'll have same kind of information, but we can see also that it's more server focused. Obviously, we have an extra bit of information with the asset inventory, which will list us, for example, what are the software that are installed, their version, if we are missing Microsoft updates. So the software inventory here, when was it installed, the version, etc., the drivers, all of this is listed into into this view. Server configuration, so will be very similar to network configuration. Database, so we can track the performance of a database, and then we can also analyze and give you advice on performance optimization. So, for example, we are going to scan and tell you if the database are respecting a set of best practice. So, do we have an index? Is it clicked correctly? Or do we have too many index? All of this will be provided by the tool to help you improve the performance. Virtualization will allow you to actually manage your virtual environment. We support VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, and we can see here the list of hypervisor with a host and with our VMs. We'll give you here a breakdown of what's the usage, how many VMs are running, etc. The top hosts that are using the resources. But we can also add a view just for VMware. So because this was global, but this is just VMware. And then by actually learning all the VM behave, we're able to, using the scroll view, give you recommendation and actionable actions to optimize again the performance of the virtual environment. So here we see, for example, the top 10 VMs with over-allocated CPU. So the tool knows that these VMs here, they are not using the resources that we've given them. So we can optimize by actually reduce for cost 1, and we can do that directly from the tool. We don't have to go into the host. We can change the config on the fly and just reboot the VM, and it's already directly done from the tool. So you don't have to do, again, the goal being to have one tool to manage everything. So this was for CPU, but we do the same with memory and also with disk usage by snapshot. The VM data also turned off or not used. We can turn them off or delete them. And we also scan for orphan VM decay. So that's also usually a problem. Is we don't have actually we don't have any tools that exist on VMware that tells us when we have a file that is no longer being used. This will scan the storage and tell you that those files actually can be removed. They are not used anymore by VMs, so you can save a lot of space here.
I think what makes this so powerful is the fact that it's not only cost saving, but it also has unattended maintenance. So in the event of a threshold being met, automatically deploy additional CPU or additional memory, which means that we can remediate automatically without having human intervention and make sure that our systems are running efficiently 24/7.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
a good example, Glenn. Just to add as well, I mean, we've got alerts where, customers alert on a CPU that spikes and then they get continuous emails. But a good alert would be, high CPU sustained over, let's say, a 15 to 20 minute period. If this is seen over, a long period, you can automatically add CPU resources within alert action.
Exactly, and also we're able because we are learning the usage of the machine. So we do that for the servers, but also for the network device. We give you a capacity forecast, so which means we're able to predict in advance when a machine will run out of CPU. And again, we can alert on this, we can report on this, so we know in advance actually the IDs. But to know before it becomes an issue, it's being proactive rather than reactive. So it's exactly the point that Glenn was mentioning at the start. All of these are to assist you in actually better managing the environment and not being caught into issue, but being able to fix them before they even happen. And in that idea, actually, we have, so I've been talking about alerts this whole time. We have a very powerful alerting engine where we can actually tailor the alerts so that they match exactly a specific subset of condition. And we can also, for example, so I'll just do a quick one. As Brunel, you were mentioning, you can specify that the condition must exist for more than a specific amount of time before the alert is triggered. So in order to avoid being spammed by alerts, and also we can do suppression of alerts if the issue is still ongoing. And so the conditions we can alert on basically everything that I've shown today, and set a specific threshold. And then we have all the actions that are available. So what I do is that I just take an existing one up. So for example, the node stop responding. And all these actions are available then once the alert is triggered. So this is the list of everything we can do. So we can do a custom property, we can integrate with ServiceNow or with our own service desk. So as we were mentioning, automating all of this by creating tickets automatically. We can execute a specific program or script. We can here change CPU. That's what we were mentioning regarding the VM management. You can do all of these actions on the VM. But you can obviously send an email to someone. We can also integrate using API to any other kind of tools. And the great thing also is that this part of the alerting is the escalation of it. So we don't have to create another alert. We can just say that, okay, if the alert is still active after 30 minutes, we can then assign another action. So, for example, we could imagine a scenario where there's an issue. So we send an email to someone, and if after 30 minutes the alert is still active, we can maybe do some automatic remediation actions. So could be restore a snapshot on the VM, or change the configuration, or any of those other actions that I've shown. So this is kind of the alerting engine that was historically used, but then since a bit actually we've been also moving toward more intelligent alerting. So I want to touch on anomaly-based alert. So anomaly-based alert is, rather than setting a threshold set in stone of, like, let's say CPU is over 80%, anomaly-based alert, what it's going to do is going to use machine learning to learn the behavior of the environment, and actually just create alerts if it's out of the norm. So we can see, for example, like for the CPU, all of these machines are currently alert. And we can see actually, if we click here, suppressed alert, this is all the alerts that would have been triggered in the normal scenario. So again, resulting in this alert fatigue, because every 10 minutes receiving an email, and it's not relevant because it's actually normal compared to the normal operating range. This is actually the normal use of this device, and we just want to be alerted when it's abnormal. So here, if we go to this timestamp, we'll see it's going to refresh. There we go. You can see here, actually, it's out of our operating range. So this time the alert was fired.
Yeah. I think this is also extremely important for help desk alerting, because typically help desks don't want to be flooded. You know, it's fine to flood an engineer's mailbox with a lot of alerts, but help desks will, you know, stop you there immediately. So we found that customers that are running a help desk are more likely to, you know, fine-tune their alerts for the environment, as opposed to if you're just doing sort of reactive alerting. So this anomalous-based alerting does really help.
Exactly, and we also have another new feature that's called Alert Stack. Alert Stack is going to create cluster of alerts, again based on the tool knows the dependency of, for example, the performance of an application or of a node, and then we're actually going to be able to create a cluster based on different other alerts. So it could be abnormal alert or regular alerts. And so to give us a view of all the alerts that were triggered at the time and the map of the dependency. And we can see what happened at this time, what were the alert triggered on the dependency of this generic node. Yeah, so that was kind of an overview of the platform. So Pranay, do you want to take over for the rest?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Guillaume, for that detailed demo. I'm usually doing the demo, so it's good to be on the other side of the fence.
Exactly.
Just let me know when you can see my screen.
We can.
Okay, excellent. All right, so as you can tell by now, we're pretty excited about observability and the direction in which the SolarWinds platform is going. We're out of time, but I'll try and go through this as quickly as possible. Just taking a step back on implementing the said solution might come with some challenges, which I'm going to touch on. So as you've seen from some of the previous slides, modern networks are extremely complex, and it's made up of various different layers and components. Point one being data volume. So modern enterprises generate vast amount of data. Storing and processing this data can be, we need big databases to be able to handle these volumes. Performance is key because the database is serving your application in terms of alerts, reports, dashboards. So it needs to be, highly available and properly spec'd. If you have to weigh up putting power on your database versus your application, the database is definitely the way to go there. Next, we see data quality. So not all data is created equally, whether it's syslogs or Windows events, different payload sizes, etc. In some cases, logs will need to be normalized so you can, easily read them. Certain devices like firewalls, VPNs, IDS systems, they generate vast amount of data. So it's important to, identify which is, meaningful and drop certain logs. And then third is obviously complexity that really goes without saying. The more layers that we have involves more protocols. So for example, SNMP on your network devices and flows. Then we've got agent data. We've got open telemetry for cloud environments. So it's really a challenge to, sort of bring all this into one environment. Some might involve opening ports, being resource intensive. So that's definitely something to look at in terms of challenges. But with that, with all that being said, however, we can highlight some, areas to focus on for a successful observability deployment. Bearing in mind that it's a journey, we've broken this up into 4 sections. Some might be a bit longer than others, but this will also depend on your environment. So, so point one is assessing your network infrastructure, determining critical components. How much is on-prem, how much is in the cloud. If more devices are on-prem, you would obviously deploy it internally. This would, reduce points of failure and also keep your monitoring data locally. If you've got more workloads in, things like Azure, GCP, definitely spin up a VM inside of Marketplace and start your monitoring. Point two is identifying goals. Obviously define specific measurable objectives aligned with the organization. It's important to get buy-in from all the teams, whether it's network, servers, storage, help desk. Everybody needs to be on board. They need to trust the data that's coming out of the system, trust the alerts. We don't want to be faced with a situation where all the alerts are going into a folder and, not really being actioned. So, yeah. Then point three is, choosing your tools and technologies. Because of the complexity, you don't want to be forced with a tool sprawl situation, especially where they're siloed and it's disparate systems not talking to each other. So the single pane of glass that Glenn mentioned earlier is very important, bringing all of this information into one view, pinpointing root cause with a few clicks. Guillaume showed earlier in AppStack where we can pinpoint, exactly where the cause is. And I think the last point here is just to continuously monitor, analyze performance. We've got, solutions where we can trend metrics over time, continuously analyze and optimize these systems for improvement. I think that's it from me. I'll hand over to Glenn. We can do a short Q&A and then wrap up.
Thanks, Praneel. I think that was, I think you summed up brilliantly, because to me, successful digital transformation means that you actually have managed your environment well, you understand it, and then you take it to the next level using the right tools for the right process. And I think that, I don't know if we've got any questions, but something for me which always comes to mind, and often we're talking to people, and the first thing that people ask me is, well, how do I know where to start? Maybe what do you say is like the ideal starting point?
So identify critical systems, that would be probably the best starting point, whether it's network devices, routers, switches, etc. Prepare the environment, get the protocols ready, agents, if it's going to be server monitoring, get your agents ready, your credentials ready. Once all of that's in place, it makes the whole deployment much more streamlined.
Okay, Gulam, maybe from your background, what do you say, in your opinion, what do you think is the most important feature of SolarWinds?
I would say the troubleshooting tools. The NetPass that I showed is a great example. But also anomaly-based alerting is a very new idea that is not on the market in other competitors yet. This is something that's really tailored against this alert fatigue and this let's say old style view of monitoring and alerting. It's really using new technology and new tool to be better alerted. As I said, these are the two features, and also the VM sprawl, I think, is great to optimize the virtual environment, because we know it can be very difficult, especially with different vendors, different hosts, who have a holistic view of this virtual environment.
Great, thanks. I think something that for me often comes up as well is, we're talking about reporting and monitoring and alerting, but the key question is, how do you know what you don't know if you don't know what you don't know? Now, that's quite a statement. But if you don't have visibility, and if you don't have everything in one place to see what you have, then it's impossible to know what you don't know. And bringing everything together in one place, to be able to analyze, to monitor, report, and to be able to provide the security and all the components that measure what's going on, is the only way to go to ensure that you have a proper observability platform that is going to give you return on your investment and make sure that your executives, as well as your technical staff, as well as your IT pros, have clear insight and have the ability to manage your enterprise successfully. Thank you for your time. I'm going to hand back to Abe.
Hi, thank you guys. Thanks, Praneel and Gulame, as well as Glenn. Thank you for a stimulating discussion. And I just want to assure everyone that we will distribute the video recording after this session. I know it was a bit quick, but then you can go through the recording at a later date And if you have any questions, please reach out to us or reach out to ATS Network Management, and they will guide you through your hybrid cloud observability journey. So that's it from me, and stay in touch. Look out for an email from IT News Africa. This email is going to contain the recording as well as a survey about the webinar. So, and give us your feedback during that survey. So thank you very much. Have a great day further, and we hope to see you again at another event or webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining today, and thanks to the team.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.